All right, so for this deep dive, we're going to be,
Okay.
the one with all those creepy, supposedly true stories?
Right.
Specifically, we're looking at the video 3 Scary True Dead of Night Horror Stories.
Okay.
So yeah, get ready for some chills. But, as always, we encourage you to think critically about what we discuss.
That's key. Because these stories, even if presented as true, really play with our expectations and fears.
Right.
What we're really going to unpack today is how they tick, psychologically speaking.
Exactly.
Nice.
So the first story, The Welder and the Midnight Intruder, starts with a pretty classic horror setup. A welder grieving the loss of his wife,
Right.
living alone on a remote farm.
Ooh, yeah.
You can practically hear the wind whistling through the cracks already.
It's like they're priming us for unease right from the start.
Yeah.
That isolation, the vulnerability of being alone in a big empty house.
Yeah,
It's almost a character itself.
totally. And things start getting weird pretty quickly.
Yeah.
First, he catches a glimpse of a figure in his late wife's bedroom window.
Oh,
A room he hasn't even touched since she passed.
That's a loaded image, isn't it?
Right.
The window,
Yeah.
a traditional symbol of the soul's passage,
Right.
and the untouched room representing his unresolved grief. It's like he's being confronted by his own inability to let go.
Yeah, it's almost as if the story is setting him up to question his own sanity, right? Like, am I seeing things? Is this grief messing with my mind?
Yeah.
But then it escalates. Strange noises at night lights, turning on mysteriously classic haunting tropes.
Yeah.
But also symptoms of anxiety and sleep deprivation, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And remember, he's already primed to be suspicious, on edge for that initial sighting.
Right.
So every little creak, every flicker of light gets amplified in his mind.
Right.
He's in a constant state of fight or flight, and that can do some crazy things to your perception.
It's almost like the story is tapping into our own fears of the dark, of being vulnerable in our homes. And the more isolated he becomes, the more he questions his own sanity.
You know, it's interesting you mentioned that
Yeah.
studies have shown that even brief periods of sleep deprivation can dramatically increase anxiety levels and make people more likely to misinterpret sensory information.
Wow.
So you can imagine how this prolonged state of hypervigilance is affecting him.
That's actually pretty terrifying when you think about it.
I
And then
know.
it gets really unsettling when he finds his deceased wife's clothes scattered on the floor of her bedroom.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, talk about a punch to the gut, right?
This is where the story really starts to blur the lines between reality and his internal world.
Right.
Is it a ghost? Is it a real intruder?
Yeah.
Or is it his guilt and grief manifesting in a physical form?
Yeah.
It's like his subconscious is trying to force him to confront his emotions.
And then the big reveal, he sees her, a woman standing in the doorway. But he says she's shorter than his wife, so he knows it's not her ghost. What do you make of that detail?
Well, there are a couple of ways to look at that.
Okay.
On one hand, it could be a red herring, a way to keep us guessing.
Right.
But on the other hand, it could be a subconscious attempt to distance himself from the pain of his loss.
That's a really interesting point. It's like his mind is protecting itself by creating a separate entity for this intruder,
Yeah.
but he still confronts her, chases her out of the house, even fires warning shots into the air.
Wow.
This is way beyond a typical haunting now, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Right.
This is where it veers into the territory of a psychological thriller.
Right.
The feeling of being stalked, of being targeted by an unknown force.
Yeah.
It's primal, and it speaks to a very real fear that many people experience.
And think about the implications of him firing a gun.
Oh, yeah.
It's like he's crossed a line, moved from fear to aggression.
Yeah,
It makes you wonder how reliable of a narrator he really is, right?
exactly. Is he losing his grip on reality?
Right.
Or is he justified in his actions? It's the ambiguity that makes it so unsettling.
And he even reports seeing her lurking in his yard on another occasion.
Oh, no.
It's like this psychological torture is never ending.
Yeah.
But I have to wonder, why not call the police at this point?
That's a good question.
Right.
It seems like a logical step, right?
Yeah.
But remember, he's already questioning his own sanity.
Right.
And there's a stigma associated with men admitting fear or vulnerability. Maybe he's afraid of being dismissed, of not being believed.
Wow, you're totally right. The story never explicitly says that,
Right.
but it's definitely a layer we can add to our understanding of the situation.
Yeah.
So we have a man tormented by events that could be explained by his grief, by a real intruder, or by something else entirely.
And that something else is what makes it linger in our minds, isn't it?
Yeah.
It taps into that primal fear of the unknown, of the things that go bump in the night.
Right.
It makes us wonder, what if it were me?
Speaking of things that go bump in the night, our next story takes us on a late-night McDonald's run that veers straight into creep territory.
Ooh.
Are you ready to dive into that one?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Late night fast food and a creepy encounter.
Yeah.
Sounds like a recipe for a classic urban legend.
All right, bring it on.
Okay, so this story is told from the perspective of someone who works late,
Right.
and gets those midnight cravings.
Oh, yeah.
They find themselves at the McDonald's drive-thru,
Okay.
2 a.m.,
Late night.
and notice a beat-up Volkswagen in the parking lot.
Okay. Harmless enough, right?
Right, until it becomes not harmless. Because
Right.
this isn't just any random parking lot.
Right.
This is the start of a classic stalker narrative, building that sense of unease slowly but surely.
Exactly. As our storyteller is driving home, they decide to stop at a scenic lookout point on a mountain. And guess what? Same Volkswagen, parked there, alone in the dark,
Okay.
on a mountain,
Yeah?
accessible by only one road.
Okay, now, that's where my alarm bells would start ringing.
Right.
We're talking about a shift from coincidence to, wait, am I being followed territory.
And think about the setting, a mountaintop isolated dark.
Right.
It's practically a horror movie set, waiting for the action to happen. Our storyteller even FaceTimes a friend for some company, probably wishing they hadn't ventured out alone.
That's smart.
Yeah.
In a situation like that, having someone else on the phone can be a lifeline.
Yeah.
It validates your fears, it helps you stay grounded, and in this case, provides a witness to whatever unfolds.
So they're trying to enjoy the view chat with their friend, maybe distract themselves from the creepy Volkswagen, when suddenly all 4 doors swing open and 4 guys get out.
Oh my God.
They just stand there looking around silent. What would you do?
That's the stuff of nightmares.
Yeah.
The silence, the unknown intentions. It's designed to intimidate, to make you feel like prey in the headlights.
Yeah.
And it plays on a deep-seated fear of the other, the unknown lurking in the shadows.
Seriously. And remember, these stories often play on pre-existing anxieties.
Right.
This is happening around 2 a.m., a time when most people are safe in their beds.
Right.
So our storyteller is already outside the norm, which might make them feel even more vulnerable.
It's like the story is tapping into that primal fear of being alone in the dark, surrounded by potential threats.
Right.
And the Volkswagen, that becomes a symbol of that threat, of the unknown dangers that lurk just outside our comfort zone.
Our storyteller and their friend try to play it cool walk up to the lookout point, but they're watching these guys the whole time. The 3 guys eventually approach them, trying to act friendly, offering a smoke, but something feels off.
Yeah.
Then our storyteller makes a crucial mistake. They mention seeing them at McDonald's.
That's the turning point. By acknowledging them, they break that unspoken barrier, that illusion of anonymity that the guys were maintaining.
Their reaction is immediate. Silence, cold expressions. The friendly facade crumbles.
Yeah.
One even pulls up his hoodie to reveal a McDonald's uniform. Like, see? We were just there totally normal. But come on, who wears their work uniform to a creepy mountaintop hangout at 2 a.m.?
It's a weak attempt at gaslighting, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Trying to make the storyteller question their own perception of events.
Right.
Maybe I'm overreacting, that kind of
Well,
thing.
totally. But remember, the storyteller isn't alone.
Right.
They have a friend on the phone who's also witnessing this, validating their fears.
Right.
And then there's the missing 4th guy.
Yes, the lurking figure in the trees.
Right.
That's the classic watcher motif, amping up the paranoia and confirming their suspicions that something is very, very wrong.
They know they need to get out of there, so they run
Oh no.
full sprint back to their cars, hearts pounding, that adrenaline surge kicking in. They manage to escape. But the story doesn't end there.
This is where the real-world implications of the story hit home.
Right.
And it moves beyond a simple ghost story or urban legend. It crosses over into something much darker, much more grounded in reality.
The next day, they go back to the McDonald's hoping to report the incident, and they show an employee a picture they snapped of the guys.
Okay.
And that's where we learn that one of them has a history of stalking and harassing his ex-girlfriend, who also worked at that McDonald's.
Suddenly, this creepy encounter takes on a whole new dimension.
Right.
It's no longer just about feeling uneasy or spooked.
Yeah.
It's about the very real, very dangerous reality of stalking and harassment,
Right.
which often escalates from seemingly harmless behaviors to something far more sinister.
It throws the whole story into a different light, right?
Yeah.
We're no longer just dealing with spooky vibes and potential hauntings.
Right.
This is a real-life threat, and our storyteller was unknowingly a target.
And it underscores the importance of trusting your gut.
Yeah.
That feeling of unease, that sense that something is off.
Right.
It's often our internal alarm system telling us to pay attention, to take precautions.
They reported the incident to the police, but the story ends with that lingering sense of unease knowing that this guy is still out there. It's a chilling reminder that even in seemingly mundane settings, like a late-night McDonald's run, darkness can lurk.
And it makes you wonder what drew them to that particular McDonald's that night.
Yeah.
Was it just a coincidence?
Right.
Or was it something more, a subconscious attraction to danger, a fascination with the forbidden?
Okay, so we've had a grieving widower potentially haunted by his past, and we've had a late-night fast food run turned stalker thriller.
Right.
Ready for story number 3. This one takes us to an abandoned church.
Oh.
A place ripe with creepy potential. Abandoned churches, they're like a magnet for spooky stories, aren't they?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, just the thought of all that history, all those whispered prayers and forgotten rituals.
Yeah.
It's enough to send shivers down your spine, even in broad daylight.
You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
These places are loaded with symbolism.
Right.
They represent not just a physical space,
Yeah.
but a spiritual one, too.
Right.
And when that space is abandoned, it's like something's been left behind, something unresolved.
So in this story, we have a group of teenagers who, like to push the boundaries, explore the forbidden.
Typical teenagers.
They've been to this abandoned church in Ardmore, Pennsylvania before, so they think they know what to expect.
Okay.
But this time, things take a decidedly darker turn.
Teenagers in abandoned places.
Yeah.
It's a classic horror trope for a reason.
Right.
There's that sense of invincibility, that feeling of being on the cusp of adulthood,
Yeah.
where you think you can handle anything.
Right.
But of course, that's also when you're most vulnerable.
Right. They sneak in, head down to the basement, which is just bare dirt, creepy already.
Oh, yeah.
They're hanging out, having fun, when suddenly, bam, a door slams shut.
Classic jump scare moment.
Right.
It's like the story is reminding us who's really in control here.
Yeah.
And it plays on that primal fear of the unseen, the thing lurking just beyond our perception.
3 of the friends are spooked enough to bolt, but our storyteller and 2 others decide to investigate. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Why do you think some people are drawn towards danger while others run away?
That's a great question. It could be personality, a thrill-seeking instinct, or even a desire to prove themselves.
Right.
In this case, I think it's also about group dynamics.
Okay.
They don't want to appear weak or scared in front of their friends,
Yeah.
especially in a setting where bravado is almost expected.
It's like a test of courage almost. So they open the door and find themselves in a small room, and that's where they encounter the mirror cracked, covered in what appears to be blood.
Ah, the mirror.
Yeah.
A powerful symbol in folklore and horror.
Right.
It represents duality, reflection, the potential for something sinister lurking beneath the surface.
Right.
And in this case, the blood adds a visceral, disturbing element that's hard to ignore.
They also find a black and white photo of a woman in a wedding dress.
Okay.
She's smiling, but something about it just feels off.
That's a clever detail, don't you think?
Yeah.
It introduces a human element, a story behind the haunting,
Right.
and the contrast between the joy of a wedding and the current atmosphere of dread
Yeah.
is incredibly unsettling.
Just as they're taking it all in, they hear another noise
Yeah.
coming from the room they were just in.
Oh, geez.
That's their cue to get the heck out of there.
Yeah.
And I can't blame them. I think I would have bolted right then and there. What about you?
Oh, absolutely. I'm all for exploring the unknown, but there's a point where curiosity needs to yield to self-preservation.
They make it out of the church, climb over the fence, and don't speak until they're a safe distance away. You can practically feel the adrenaline pumping the relief mixed with terror.
That silence is loaded with meaning, isn't it?
Yeah.
They're processing the experience,
Right.
trying to make sense of what they saw, maybe even questioning their own sanity.
But just as they're leaving, the storyteller turns back and sees a figure standing in the window.
Uh-oh.
A silhouette, nothing more. But it's enough to leave a lasting impression of unease.
That final glimpse is the cherry on top of the creepy sundae.
Yeah.
It reinforces that lingering doubt. Was it a ghost? A prankster?
Right.
Or just their imagination playing tricks on them? We're left to wonder, just like the storyteller.
And you know what's even creepier?
What's that?
The storyteller mentions that the church was later demolished.
Oh, wow.
It's like the whole experience has been erased, leaving only memories and unanswered questions.
There's something poetic about that, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's almost as if the church and whatever might have resided within it has been swallowed by time,
Right.
leaving only the echoes of fear and the power of the story itself.
So 3 stories, 3 encounters with the unexplained. We had a grieving widower tormented by his past, a late-night McDonald's run turned stalker thriller, and a group of teenagers confronting their fears in an abandoned church.
What strikes me is how these stories, well, different in their specifics, all play on our primal fears, the fear of the dark, the unknown,
Yeah.
the feeling of being watched. They tap into that sense of vulnerability we all experience when we step outside our comfort zone.
And ultimately, it's up to us, the listeners, to decide what we believe.
Right.
Are these true accounts of the paranormal?
Yeah.
Explanations grounded in psychology? Or maybe a bit of both?
The beauty of these stories is that they leave room for interpretation.
Right.
They invite us to question,
Yeah.
to analyze, to connect the dots, and draw our own conclusions.
So, to our listener, we leave you with this. What resonated with you most in these stories? Did any of them trigger a memory of your own encounter with the unexplained? And most importantly, how do these stories make you feel about venturing out for that late night snack run?
Keep your eyes open, trust your gut, and remember, sometimes the most terrifying monsters are the ones we create in our own minds.